On. Hello and welcome Eric V. Stacks to the Larpar Show, where we talk about what is money, what is coming, and how to protect your family. Eric is a cannabis grower from California. He popped up on Bitcoin Twitter a few months ago, probably early last year, and has since been orange pilling people around the world about Bitcoin and cannabis. He's been doing some amazing videos and content and has built up a nice big following from his straight talking and no bull approach. So, Eric, welcome to the show and tell us how you discovered Bitcoin and your journey so far.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your show, and it was awesome meeting you in Madeira. Yeah, so let's see, the comprehensive but short version would be is I grew up in Southern California. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. I would say that divorce was also a result of some of the fiat pressures, boom bust cycles, kind of there's this, I don't know, we have an issue where the economic pressures that are imposed upon people because of the debasement of the currency, the interest rates getting dropped and then raised, those boom bust cycles create hardships, and it's very difficult for families to handle that. And so that and the incentive is, in some sense, not to keep people together. There's a whole, system that profits from putting people through the court system. So anyways, my parents divorced when I was 5 years old. My mother remarried to a psychiatrist. She was going to school to become a doctorate in sociology, which she achieved. But for the 15 years that she was married to the psychiatrist, she got into antidepressants. And she ended up, by the time I was 20 years old, committing suicide as a result of taking these pills that really didn't solve any of her problems. And so in my late teens, I discovered cannabis and very quickly had an intuitive feeling that the notion that this plant was illegal was preposterous. You can go to the store, the gas station, wherever, supermarket, and you can get a bunch of alcohol. You can go buy cigarettes, tobacco. You can go and purchase, or your doctor will prescribe all of these patented pharmaceuticals that are all new chemical cocktails that we really know very little about, how they affect our physiology and our psychology, etc. And so by the time I was mid 20s, 25 years old, a friend of mine that I went to school with in Southern California came up to Northern California and went to Humboldt State University. And they became friends with some of the people within the cannabis community at the time. And they invited me up from Southern California to come up to a fall harvest. And so I came up in September of 2009 and trimmed a bunch of outdoor cannabis on a medical marijuana farm. In 1996, the people of the state of California voted to have medical marijuana, and a bill, Prop 215, was written into effect that allowed you to lawfully produce and distribute cannabis to qualified patient members. So if you had a doctor recommendation, you had an attorney, and you set up the right paperwork, you could produce cannabis and you could share it within your patients or whatever. And so, yeah, that was in 2009. I never left. And for me, participating in the cannabis industry and producing cannabis, like every time I bag a pound and sell it into the marketplace, it's like a royal FU to the pharmaceutical industry that has killed multiple family members of mine, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't only think that pharmaceuticals are bad. I think that there's a lot of great things that come out of technology, etc. But with the inflationary money system that we have, coupled with the deflationary forces in the marketplace, like let's look at Jeff Booth's work, it's two opposing forces. And it creates this dynamic where it's perpetually harder to make profits. Your margins are always going away. So you have to build some regulatory moat around a sector in the marketplace. And you have to figure out these like kind of conniving business tactics to perpetually exploit your customers. And so, yeah, I've always kind of had an aversion to that. I've seen a lot of my family suffer greatly as a result of the pharmaceutical industry and what is now my understanding is just the sheer fiat world. And so I've pushed back at that by producing cannabis. Cannabis is a very medicinal, anti-cancerous. It's a special, powerful plant. I think it's also a safe recreational drug, if you want to call it that. There's been no one in all of known history has overdosed on cannabis. People die every day from alcohol. And so, yeah, I've been producing cannabis since 2009. I was in the right position when in 2015, the governor of the state of California signed into effect a bill called MRSA, which is Medical Marijuana Safety Regulations Act, which was basically the beginning of the regulatory framework for what was going to be the inevitable passing of Prop 64, which was recreational adult use, like full-blown legalization within the state of California, which now the regulators were coming in on a whole nother level. And so I had a 501c3 nonprofit, and I was producing cannabis, and I was sending that cannabis down to other 501c3 dispensaries in Southern California, and they were selling it to people with doctor recommendations. And so I was in the right place at the right time, you could say, to go into the regulatory process to become a full-blown state licensed cannabis producer. And so I bought a property with all of my money. I scrapped together every fucking penny I could and purchased this land in consultation with Humboldt County and the state of California so that I could get a license to produce and farm cannabis. And I succeeded at that. It was what I look back at as a series of miracles. I'm very fortunate to have had that success, especially at the time and the way and for the amount of money that I did. And my dream come true, you could say, became an absolute royal nightmare. I got hit with a litany, a whirlwind of counterparty risk, political risk, threats of lawsuit. Like, it was absolute chaos. That and commoditization, as the demand is being associated with supply over a very short period of time, the pound price or the price of the bulk wholesale cannabis plummeted. And so I must have been 33 years old, I believe, at the time. And so as soon as I closed escrow on the property, I started to really go down the economic rabbit hole. I needed to understand what caused these boom bust cycles. What were the forces that were affecting the value of the property that all of my economic energy, all of my money was in this property, was tied up in the regulatory process to become licensed. And so I go down the money rabbit hole, the economic rabbit hole, and that very quickly leads me to the understanding of fractional reserve banking, the Federal Reserve, the creature from Jekyll Island, hard money, monetary history, how we use gold, why gold lacked in its portability, which then led to banks and certificates, and then the bankers issued more certificates and they had gold, blah, blah, blah. We detached from 1971, et cetera, et cetera. And then in 2017, at the end of the year, is when I came across Bitcoin, and I had just spent about 9 months very intensely trying to understand the monetary system or just the greater macro economy. And my mind just exploded because I was really well primed to understand that if you have this thing that's a money, it's engineered money. Money has infinite demand on it because of money, like in the famous words of Breedlove, money is a call option on any good or service that the marketplace produces. So everyone wants money. Currently, it's 8 billion some odd people, about 8 billion people want money, but not 8 billion people want a property in Northern California or a flat in Miami or a Monet or Apple stock or whatever, but everyone wants money. So you have infinite demand, but you have true scarcity. And so that was really a catalyst for me to pivot my whole life strategy and in the famous words of Sailor, dematerialize my property, sell this land. So I ended up selling the property after owning it for 2 years as a fully functional licensed cannabis farm. And I pivoted my model to consulting because I'm quite efficient, and I've been doing this for a long time. And as the price of cannabis, just like the price of everything, eventually falls to the marginal cost of production. Thanks to Jeff Booth. He helped me clarify very well that force that I was contending with. People are struggling because your cost of operating, your cost of living denominated in dollars is going up. And if you're a commodity producer, especially a cannabis producer, your wages are going down denominated in dollars. So it's like an extreme version of like the same problem everybody has. We have wage deflation. Even if your wages go up, let's say 5% a year, but your cost of living goes up 10% a year, you actually took a 5% haircut. In my case, as an example, 10 years ago, a high quality pound, like a perfect AAA premier pound of cannabis would be like $3,000 to $4,000. bulk wholesale in the state of California, sold from a producer to a dispensary. Now a better pound is like $1,000 at best. And my cost of living has doubled, if not tripled. So I make like 1/6 to 1/24 per unit produced. And so how do you combat that? I can scale up, but that further exacerbates the problem because you're making this more abundant, which is good for everybody. And especially in my life, my personal belief is that if you want cannabis, you should have access to it. And so it being abundant and cheap is good, but not on a fiat standard. And so that drove me into Bitcoin. And then when in 2020, when the Sailor series hit, I listened to the Sailor series, my mind exploded again, and I panic sold everything else that I had, and I just plowed everything all into Bitcoin. And I pivoted my strategy too. I had an idea that I was going to purchase a house because I had sold my house. I had 10 acres with a home and 7 acres raw that ended up having a cannabis farm on it. And so as opposed to purchasing a house, I realized, like, wait a second, like Bitcoin is hyper mobile and metaphysical property essentially. And I own property, so I'm hedged against the debasement, and it goes wherever I go. The state of California and these well-intentioned politicians and their crazy rules and crazy fees, like if I decide I'm going to move, which I am, I just, my property goes with me, and I have to vape 6% of it by selling my house. So anyways, yeah, I've become a hardcore Bitcoin maximalist. And for the last 3 months, I think starting in December, I started posting rants on Twitter. Like you said, I just start the camera and I just rip for 5 to 30 minutes and I turn it off and I post it and I just move forward with my day. And I've got quite a bit of traction. People seem to like the enthusiasm and the more philosophical, long-term, societally based, like, I don't know, abstract concepts that I speak to and the implications of Bitcoin. And it led me to Madeira. Andre, the coordinator of Madeira, asked if I'd come and do a keynote, which was an honor, so I did. And now I'm talking to you. And so, yeah, that's the shortest, most comprehensive version of my story and how I got here in this moment in time.
Amazing, amazing. Good stuff, good stuff. And then how has Bitcoin influenced you in the cannabis business? Has it helped you or anything like that? Because I don't know. Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely, tremendously. And so being a cannabis producer, I've experienced being a cannabis producer at the time that I've been producing cannabis, I've experienced an extreme version of something that we're all experiencing different flavors of, you could say. And that is the price drops to the marginal cost of production. Where you have a large margin, it's indicative of the market wanting something that there's not enough of. If there's not enough of something, the market will bid the price up. As the price gets bid up, that margin goes up, which increases the economic incentive for market participants to flow into that sector of the marketplace. And in this case, it's cannabis, and produce the cannabis and sell that into the market. So basically, essentially, satiate the demand with supply. And so as the demand is getting met with supply, it's bringing the margin down. And so it's making it harder to operate. At the same time, my cost of doing business, cost of living is going up, denominated in dollars. And so experiencing that extreme version, and then also not having access to FDIC insured banking, not having access to 30-year fixed traditional mortgages as a result of being a cannabis producer where I'm lawful within the state of California, but the federal government treats it as a Schedule I drug. So FDIC insured financial institutions don't want anything to do with it. So I've had all of these very limiting issues as a result of being a cannabis producer that I have felt very passionate about. So those issues and being limited to cash and purchasing gold and silver from my local bullion dealer, and then experiencing that extreme version of wage deflation coupled with extreme cost of living, increase, really primed me to understand the magnitude of Bitcoin. And so beginning in 2017, I started to adopt Bitcoin as a savings technology or as a treasury reserve asset. I put it on my balance sheet, you could say. And the appreciation that's taken place on my balance sheet has been so great that it's actually happening at a faster rate than my loss of wages is taking place. So if I wanted to proceed as a cannabis producer for the rest of my life, or let's even use a different example. Let's say I inherited a couple 1,000-acre ranch and I graze cattle. And I wanted to keep the ranch because it's been in the family for multiple generations. And I'm competing against these fiat corporate farm feedlots, these mega meat companies that are producing gross, unhealthy, unethical, inhumane meat. And they're doing it at a much less cost than I am. And I have a problem competing against these people in the marketplace. Well, over the years, if I'm able to sweep any of my surplus into Bitcoin, the Bitcoin is appreciating at such a fast rate that I would be able to sell down my Bitcoin to pay for any business losses that I would be experiencing in order for me to essentially survive. Like we talk about it, it is a life raft, and it's a life raft for so many more deeper reasons and in ways than people initially think, but it is essentially a life raft, and you could just dissect that and apply that so much. And so, yeah, the appreciation on my balance sheet or my Bitcoin has appreciated so fast that it's hedged me against that existential crisis that we have where we're losing wages or what we're producing is becoming more abundant. And it's everything. It's content creators, it's tech companies, like everything the market wants, we will figure out how to make more of. And so, yeah, it's Bitcoin
Yeah,
is a monumentally big deal.
yeah, and just homing in on that point, and I've seen it myself as well. Okay, how when I truly figured this out and I realized I got that aha moment, yeah, and I started putting more into Bitcoin and I started selling other assets that I had, physical assets, turning them back into
Yeah.
fiat and then changing it into a digital asset. My wealth is growing so much faster than my business is
Yeah.
even creating. Yeah, every
Yes.
month I'm looking at my balance sheet and the numbers just going up and up and up. And I'm saying,
Yeah.
this is madness. What's going on here? And
Totally.
people, a lot of people haven't realized that, and it'll take them a little bit of time to realize that. And it might take them maybe a year or a year and a half to be in Bitcoin before they start seeing that and understanding what's really going on. So we can work as hard as we want and as much as we want. But if we're not implementing a technology in our work or in our saving strategy, we're actually going nowhere. We're actually going under.
Totally.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Like houses are losing value like cars do, but it's an optical illusion. You don't notice it because the fiat currency, wherever you are in the world, and let's use my case, I'm in the States, so the US dollar is bleeding energy so much faster that the dollar denominated value of a house is going up in numerical terms, but in real terms, it's going down. And so it creates this optical illusion. Like one of the things I love that Saylor spoke to at Bitcoin Prague 2023 is if you take property, real estate on average takes 1% annual maintenance cost. So the value of the property, 1% of the value of the property you're going to have to allocate to maintaining this thing, because entropy, the forces of nature, want to take this physical thing and bring it back into the dirt and the earth, right? Then if you add 1% property tax from your local government, you have a 2% loss essentially. So if you take $1 million piece of property and you subtract 2% a year over the value, that's a 2% energy loss, which equates to a 2%, or 35-year half-life. So over 35 years in real terms with paid for real estate, you lose half of the value. So you got to keep allocating energy into this real estate to maintain it. The half-life of Bitcoin is forever. It's metaphysical property. It's invisible. It takes no energy to maintain it. That is a monumentally big deal. And so, yeah, as people figure that out, I think one of the things that's really, it's just so amazing about that is me, for example, if Bitcoin didn't exist, I would probably own a rental property or two, and then I would own the house that I live in, right? Because traditionally those have been good investments because as the dollar denominated value goes up, you go to your bank and you say, hey, I have newfound equity over the last couple of years. I want to borrow a percentage of that equity. I'm going to go buy more assets, and it creates this cantillionaire feedback loop. But the fact that I don't own any real estate and people are every day having these light bulb moments and selling down their dollar derivatives and they're selling down their real estate portfolios, that's downward price pressure on housing. It's making housing more abundant. People need to live in homes. People are hoarding homes and treating homes as money because the money's broken. And so as much as economic energy goes into Bitcoin, because it's invisible, it's metaphysical, but it's scarce, it's not unethical that someone owns a bunch of Bitcoin. But it is indirectly second and third order effects of owning a bunch of real estate means that you are in some way contributing to homelessness. Because by not owning a bunch of real estate and having real estate be really abundant and cheap, then people can afford houses. They can afford their rent. And so, yeah, I mean, there's just so much about Bitcoin. It's just like Sailor says, all your models are destroyed. Like, it just changes the financial strategy that we've had for all of known history. And it's just such a beautiful thing.
I was involved in property. I had a few rental homes here and investment properties. It's all gone.
Yeah.
A bit of it all. Once I copped on what was going on. Yeah. Even changed around my business as well, the way I work now. So I've more freedom. I can go wherever I want. I don't have to be locked down in this country. If anything happens, I'm out of here. I'm out of here.
I feel that
happens. And
I have the same strategy.
Yeah. It's amazing. Amazing what Bitcoin does for you. And it's a whole mindset shift as well, isn't it?
It is, and it takes a lot of thinking and research
and time
and listening.
It takes a bit of time to get that proper mindset shift. But once you do, you'll realize, Sailor says, there is no second best, and there's nothing else to do.
Totally. Yeah. You have to wire new neural pathways because it's an inversion in the incentive structure. It's really difficult to understand that. And it's like, I think that there's a cognitive dissonance and an inability to see the fact that this is an incorruptible protocol. People struggle with that, though, and they're very suspicious, and they have a problem with that because for all of known history, since the very beginning of time, every protocol, everything, every apparatus, construct, political build, government, whatever, has been corruptible. And, like Breedlove has said this, Bitcoin is essentially the discovery of incorruptibility. It's a monumentally big deal. And it just changes the fundamental fabric of our reality as far as I'm concerned. This thing, you have this bearer instrument that is invisible. It's informational, but it's a bearer instrument. I send it from me to you, and I no longer have that information or that Bitcoin. You now have it. So the incentive goes from violence to peace. That's a big deal. And so, yeah, super fascinating, super inspiring. Yeah. And I think that as the number continues to go up and people understand and they think more about it, I mean, we are, I believe in hyper rate moving into a Bitcoinized world. And I like to focus on that because it is taking place and it's super inspiring. It really is.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the more people are learning about it. And I remember in 2022, I was looking at data and it was saying that the Bitcoin was being adopted 3 times faster than the internet was in the early days. So that being said, by 2026, there's going to be 1 billion people, 1 billion chasing after 21 million units.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. It really is. I'm also really excited about the accounting change, the accounting rules changing in the States, because like Sailor's issue with his company, he had $500 million cash on his balance sheet. He's a fiscally conservative individual. He ran a small, I mean, it's big if you're a pleb, but it's a small publicly traded tech company, software providing company. And when COVID hit and they essentially, doubled the money supply and he knew that that was happening, he realized he had an existential crisis and all of this cash on his balance sheet was an epically bleeding out, melting ice cube. He had to scour the marketplace and he only had a few options. He could take that $500 million. He could pay it back to his shareholders in the form of a dividend. He could buy back shares in his own company, or he could buy shares in another company. And so the game theoretic, like the strategy when you are a publicly traded entity is to either get gobbled up by a larger company or become a larger company and gobble up these smaller companies. And the profit procuring business tactics, you could say, I suppose, for a company like Nestle, as an example, they're incentivized to take on debt because as the currency gets debased, the debt is getting smaller over time. And then they're buying up small mom and pop companies like Annie's Foods, as an example. A small mom and pop company starts canning organic food, and they're incentivized to figure out how to take a large exit position and sell to a larger company like Annie's or like Nestle. And I don't know if that happened, but this is just an example. Then Nestle is pretends like Annie's is Annie's still owned by mom and pop, not owned by Nestle. And then they're going to take their margins and they're going to do things like go into, Africa and drill a well in some impoverished area where people are economically suffering, and then sell their water back to them. It's like, hey, we're going to drill a well and then we're going to exploit you and sell this water back to you, even though you're poor and you have nothing. And so as opposed to doing more of that, now these corporations are going to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet because these corporations, let's use Larry Fink as an example. Larry Fink is really disliked globally. And I don't know anything about this individual other than he's the head of BlackRock, right? And so he has been managing a fund. The business model is to manage all of this money and make money doing it, make money for their clients, right? So the way you do that in the fiat world is to buy equities and to buy now a bunch of single family real estate. And you could leverage that. It's appreciating as the dollar is debasing. And so you could say that we live in a world essentially where it's strictly a game of trying to exert the least amount of energy to get the most in return. And so now, because we have this finite monetary instrument that's hard capped at 21 million, that as the demand goes up, the supply doesn't change. Now, if you want to make the most, it's to buy and hold Bitcoin. And so as opposed to drilling a well in some poor, thirsty, starving, impoverished third world country, Nestle's going to start stacking sats. And so instead of BlackRock buying more single family homes in the United States of America, they're stacking sats. So it's like Jeff Booth. I love one of the things that he says, where you have abundance in money, you create scarcity in everything else. The money is shitty. It's bleeding energy. It's a hot potato. Look at Venezuela. People are doing anything that they can to get out of the currency. They get paid and they're like, look, if I don't sell these Bolivar immediately, then by the end of 2 weeks from now, when I get my next paycheck, my food costs more. So you ditch the currency and you hoard things that people need. Well, where you have scarcity in money, you create abundance in everything else. And like you said, you sold down your real estate portfolio. I live in a rental. More and more people are figuring that out every day. BlackRock's buying Bitcoin instead of more houses. And so that's a really, really inspiring, exciting thing.
Yeah. And it's just down to doing your work on it, isn't it? Yeah, you have to learn about Bitcoin. And even to people that I know now, a year ago, they were all laughing at me. A few weeks ago, they were all laughing at me, thinking me I'm crazy and what are we doing buying this? And I'm a gambler. And the people that I didn't even know starting to text me now saying, okay, Lawrence, what's going on here with this? Maybe we should have listened to you. Maybe we should have bought at 15,500 when you were ringing us up and screaming at us, but we didn't know about it. And as I'm saying to anybody, listen, it's still early. We're actually still early. This is just starting. It hasn't even really started yet. So do your work and learn about it, because there's no point buying this if you don't know about it and you don't learn about it. I believe it's all about education and learning about it, and then how to store it and how to protect it and how to carry it on then to your kids, your grandkids. Yeah, I'm starting to think now 100 years out. A few years ago, I'd never be thinking that. I'd be thinking what's going on in the next job next week. What's happening?
Totally. Gosh, isn't that an incredible thing? And that's going to bring, it's like Bitcoin, I believe, is bringing solvency back into an insolvent world. It's bringing culture into a world where the culture has been debased. Like our civilization is heavily suffering really as a result of fiat. And I don't even think fiat necessarily is a technology put together by some particularly diabolical, evil individuals per se. I mean, we could discuss that, and it's kind of a fun, conspiracy conversation to have. I just think it goes back to we live in a world where the game is to figure out how to get the most. And so the sociopaths who are willing to plunder, lie, cheat, steal, kill, they had a game theoretic advantage in the marketplace. And that's also why we're all so broken inside, man. Like, for all of known history, if you're ethical, you knew that you were at a disadvantage against the people who were willing to be unethical. And so, yeah, like, kind of lost my train of thought there. But anyways, it's exciting, man. It's so exciting. Yeah,
it's
the
beautiful.
time preference.
It is beautiful. And it gives us
yeah,
so much hope for the future, doesn't it? And
it
a lot of
does.
people don't understand that, and the words sometimes that we use about hope and a flight to safety. I've been since I've started this journey, I've been studying a lot about the macro, what's going on. I even went and joined Safety and Ominous's course. He does this course, Principles of Economics. I didn't know that. And I've been a businessman, like I'm 50 years of age, I'm a little bit older than yourself. If I would have learned this stuff a few years ago in my early 20s, I'd be way ahead. Way ahead.
Yeah.
And I've done okay in life, but
yeah,
it would have been a ball.
Yeah. Oh, so what I
changer.
was gonna say is the world we have built based upon, dude, literally the world that our civilization is built on a yellow shiny rock. That was our monetary technology, and where gold hit its limitation because of its physicality, we had to use a layer 2, and the layer 2 fiat was corruptible. And so if you look at the world and you think, dang, we built all of this with a dishonest system that was heavily corruptible, it's actually quite a beautiful thing. You can look at this clown world and you can think this is disgusting. And it is, and that's true. But at the same time, you could look at clown world and you can say, wow, this is absolutely monumentally epic that we were able to do this. And now that we have an honest ledger and it's not just money, it's just money. Like I heard Tomer say that, and I absolutely love that. Like it's really incredible what we've done with a broken, dishonest system, and what's about to take place, I think, is just unimaginable for most people, I think. And it's just really, really inspiring. And it's like,
that's exactly the word that was coming into my head. It's inspiring, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely big time, man. Really is.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah,
we all struggle a little bit with the challenges in the world, and it creates this, like, I don't know, this hopelessness, this feeling of hopelessness that we combat in different ways through spirituality and, religion and whatever things that you do to kind of deal with that. It's essentially a game theoretic disadvantage if you're a moral person, because if you're not a moral person, then you're willing to plunder, lie, steal, and steal. Pre-Bitcoin, that was the way that you got the most. If you could corrupt something, it gave you an advantage. And so, yeah, I think that
fiat incentivizes you to actually do that, to try and get ahead.
Rent seeking. Totally. Yeah, because then if you can get enough, you can then coast. It's like, hey, if you have $100 million worth of stuff, real estate, equities, whatever, and the debasement 7.5% a year, interestingly enough, your portfolio appreciates at 7+% a year, right? And so if you have $100 million worth of stuff and you accrue $7 million in newfound equity in a year, you can go to a financial institution. They have to lend more money into the marketplace to keep the value of the assets propped up in a deflationary world where we're pushing the value of everything down. So you get to borrow $3.5 million of your $7 million in newfound equity. You're now worth $3.5 million more over your $100 million. And you have $3.5 million to go spend in the marketplace to live like a king and go buy more assets. So that's that quintillionaire feedback loop. And so and the debt is not taxed in the States, and I don't think anywhere around the world. So if you go to a bank and you borrow some of your newfound equity, it's not taxed. You go buy new assets and you borrow against those assets. And you're not selling them and you're not earning income. And so that's that issue that, like, I don't know, the AOCs, Alexandria Cortez, for example, she's running around just yelling at the world, we need to tax the rich people, redistribute wealth. You can't do that. You disincentivize innovation. And Bitcoin is the redistribution of wealth that the world wants to see, and more people are waking up to that every day. If you're not productive, you have to sell down your Bitcoin. You can't just live off of your Bitcoin forever without a fiat mechanism on top of it that you could borrow against your Bitcoin with. And so, yeah, that's it. It's really exciting. The world is going to change at hyper rate for the better. And yeah, I mean, it makes you think way more long term. It really does.
Yeah, definitely. But then that being said, people need to take the time to go and learn.
Yeah,
And a lot of people are stuck in the rat race and they're saying, I haven't got time to learn about this. I haven't got time to learn about this. Well, if you want change, you're the only person that can do that to change your life.
totally.
So
Yeah, yeah.
you know, there's one way of changing it. Take a bit of time to learn about it and then move on and implement it. Whatever you've learned. You know, I've got this saying, knowledge is power, but you need to make a plan. Once you have the knowledge, you need to make a plan. And then you get better and better at what you're doing, or you get more power.
Totally. Yeah.
You know?
Well, pain is life's greatest teacher. And as people experience more economic hardship, the incentive for them to learn what's happening goes up. It's a little bit challenging too, because the governments and the mainstream media gaslight everybody, and it's the evil capitalist, it's, blah, blah, blah. And so they're definitely navigating around the reality of what the problem is. But at the same time, one of the things that I don't particularly love, and I understand the idea, the concept. There's a lot of Bitcoin influencers, content creators, or Bitcoin advocates that are constantly talking about, you're missing out. You're going to miss out. Well, sure, you might miss out on the 100 to 1000x that's ahead of us over the next 20 to 50 years, 100 years, whatever. But you're not missing out on the benefits that Bitcoin brings. The existence of Bitcoin, the fact that you sold down your real estate portfolio, the fact that I own no real estate is downward price pressure on housing, and it is contributing to helping with homelessness, and it's helping the no-coiners. No-coiners, their lives are getting better today, even if they don't own Bitcoin. And the other thing, as long as Bitcoin exists and it's decentralized and secure, it's highly probabilistically going to appreciate at a much faster rate than everything else in the marketplace. So the strategy forever is make extra money and put it into Bitcoin, and it appreciates at a faster rate than everything else. So so you buy it forever, it doesn't matter the price. It doesn't matter if it's $1 million a coin, 10 million a coin, 100 million a coin. It doesn't make a difference. You buy it no matter what, because it's the apex asset. It's the apex property. It is the greatest financial instrument in all of human history. So yeah, it's making everything better.
Something interesting that came up with a conversation with me and Laura, my partner, and she said to me last night, so when you get to the number of Bitcoin that you want, are you gonna stop? And I said, what? I said, stop and do what? What else am I going to do? I'm not going to go back and buy property again. We don't need a new car or a new Jeep, or, we don't need any new houses. What else am I going to do? What else am I going to save in? We found the number one thing to save in. We just keep on saving. And that, you know what I mean?
And it's ethical. It's the only ethical investment. The second, third order effects of hoarding Bitcoin are not only not unethical, they're ethical. By you taking your Bitcoin and hodling it in perpetuity, you're strengthening the other Bitcoin that are trading within the marketplace, because there's less of it. And that's really the inverse. It's hard for people to understand that. They're like, oh, that's greedy people, and money is the root of all evil, and all these things. It's like, are you being selfish? Are you being gluttonous by trying to take this, by stacking as much as you can? I think of us as, like, metaphorically, as squirrels. We're like squirrels going through the forest, and we're gathering nuts to survive the winter, right? The certainty of running out of the ability to procure resources. Someday you're not going to be able to work. Your body won't let you. You might be able to build a business that's cash flows, whatever, but let's look at the metaphor. So you're trying to save up energy so you can survive some duration of time. Well, if you get 1 winter's worth of acorns as a squirrel, you're not going to stop. You're going to keep gathering up acorns because maybe you get 2 winters worth. Maybe you get 10. Maybe you get 100. Maybe you get so much that your children, your offspring don't need to worry about going into the forest and gathering nuts. Well, if one family of squirrels gathers all of the nuts in the forest, other ones are now starving to death, right? Well, we've dematerialized those acorns, and we've made the acorn a protocol, these acorns that represent energy, a protocol, and the units that represent those protocol, the Bitcoin, are divisible by 100 million subunits and further infinitely divisible as required. So someday a Satoshi, 1 sat, will buy 5 cups of coffee. And we're going to need to write in a backwards compatible software upgrade a further subdivision. And so the hoarding of this metaphysical money, this call option on any other good or service that the marketplace produces, is not causing problems for other people. Other people aren't starving. If one person could own all the homes on planet Earth, they have the ability to rent it out to whoever they want at whatever price they want, and a bunch of people could be homeless. If some squirrel figured out how to become so effective at gathering acorns, then all the other ones are going to starve. But if you keep stacking like a psychopath Bitcoin maximalist, you're actually making everybody's life, including no coiners, you're making their life better. And so it's the only ethical investment. It's absolutely amazing. Most people they don't see it yet. That's okay.
We're just early. We're just early,
yeah.
dudes. That's all. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So, Eric, what's next for you then in the future? Where's your life going? What are you going to do? What's the plans? Any events you're going to go to? You don't have to say it all here, what you're planning, but like, you know.
Well, so I'm putting an end to my cannabis growing career. The way that I see it, cannabis no longer needs me. I've participated as a freedom fighter and in some infinitesimal, very teeny small way. I've helped to participate in the pushback against prohibition, and I think that we're past the tipping point. You could say the toothpaste is out of the tube and it's not going back in. The federal government at some point will legalize cannabis, and other countries and jurisdictions around the world are doing so. And there's a bunch of individuals who are passionate about cannabis. And for me, I am very passionate about Bitcoin, and I want to work in the Bitcoin space. And currently I've been creating content about Bitcoin. So I have a few ideas as far as some Bitcoin only businesses that I think I might want to begin in the nearer future. So yeah, I'm going to take that proverbial leap of faith and embark on a new chapter in my life. You know, I don't think it's always this way, but at least for me in my life, the door that I want to go through seems to only open after I closed the one that I don't want to be in any longer. And so like, it's really difficult though, because especially when you're like, look, I don't want to sell down my Bitcoin. I got to make money, obviously, you know, you want to like hedge yourself against that uncertainty, but I'm both quite an extreme individual, but very conservative at the same time. And so, you know, I like to, I don't know, take that leap of faith and just do like, there's no plan B for me. I don't have a plan B. I just decide I'm going to do something and I'm going to either succeed at it or I'm going to die trying. And so, yeah, I'm segueing into a new chapter in my life. I'm working Bitcoin only. It's kind of like, Jeff Booth, one of the things that I love that he says, he goes, you know, if you focus on the old world, the old system, the dishonest ledger, clown world, whatever you want to call it, and you yell at it and you participate in it in any capacity, you're really only strengthening it. And so he spends all of his time and all of his energy working in and focusing on and talking about the new world, the new system, the Bitcoin paradigm. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's like it's a new age for humanity. It's like this ushers us into a new era. And so, yeah, and that's what I'm doing. I'm hyper focused on Bitcoin. It's like sailor, laser eyes. You need to be really focused. So many things that are pulling out our energy. You can do, essentially, I believe you can do anything you want, but not everything you want. And so, yeah, I'm getting into the Bitcoin space all in. I'm hardcore hodler, and I'm then going to as many of the conferences that I can, because being around other like-minded individuals, the Bitcoiners, like Madeira, for example. This is the second conference that I've been to. I was at Pacific Bitcoin in 2013 and last October. And Andre, the coordinator of Madeira, Bitcoin Atlantis, saw one of my rants on Twitter. He sent me a message and says, hey, you need to come to this conference and do a keynote. And so obviously I can't say no to that. And so I took my wife and my kid, and that was a much bigger venue than Pacific Bitcoin was. And
Yeah.
being around all of these Bitcoin only individuals is so special, because you're meeting people that you have so many aligned beliefs, morals, and values with, that immediately you have a deeper connection than you do with random people that you run into in normie land, you could say. And that's a really incredible, inspiring, very energizing thing. It's so empowering and like enlightening, and like it just charges you up. And so I'm going to, I don't know, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to El Salvador. I'll be down there for the halving party. And then I'm going to spend a
Nice.
couple weeks in El Zonte. I have tickets and plans already situated for Nashville. I want to go to the Oslo Freedom Forum and Bitcoin Prague. I'll probably do that. I haven't, figured all the details out yet. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so
And when you're down in El Salvador, you should go down to Berlin. There's another thing in there in
I've heard that
Berlin.
recently.
Yeah, yeah. So a friend of mine, Charlie Stevens, that was a speaker at our event, Bitcoin Ireland event last year. After the event, he decided to move down to El Salvador, and he went down to Berlin, and they've set up a whole community down there. And it's like
Incredible.
it's amazing what they're doing, and the orange pilling all the businesses, and they've got a couple of hundred businesses down there now accepting Bitcoin, and yeah, they're amazing. Yeah, Bitcoin Berlin. Go down and meet them. I'll connect you with them anyway, yeah. When you're down and you
I
just go
appreciate that.
meet them. Yeah.
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 Yeah, man. So that's the last thing that I'm converting to a Bitcoin standard is my work. And there is some parallels between Bitcoin and cannabis. It is this decentralizing, unstoppable force. Like, how do you stop somebody from taking this small little seed and growing a plant somewhere? You got all this land and all this space all over planet Earth. Like, you can't stop people from running a node. It's that vortex of incentives. The people want something over time. Eventually they get it. You can't plunder, exploit, lie, cheat, and steal in perpetuity. And now we have the most leverage we have ever had. We have a way to combat that in a way we've never had in all of known history. And what's really exciting too, and I'll leave this thought here, is that the corrupted individuals and institutions and governments and central banks, etc., their willingness to lie, cheat, steal, and kill means that they don't care. They'll do whatever to get the most. Now, to get the most, you stack as many sats as you can. So I would argue that somebody who's predisposed or capable and willing of doing anything to acquire the most, they're willing to take the path of least resistance to get the most. They're now incentivized to do what is ethical to get the most, and that is to buy sats and to mine Bitcoin. Mining Bitcoin protects the network. It increases the hash rate. It's ethical. Selling down a bunch of real estate and buying Bitcoin is ethical. It's good for everybody. And so, yeah, it's one of the things I understand, but I get a little, I don't know. It's not so favorable. I don't like listening to it. Is the rhetoric around how everybody's so bummed out and upset that, I just saw a post on X today. Satoshi gave us all this freedom, this gift of Bitcoin, and you guys are giving it to the institutions. It's what we want. We want the whole world on a Bitcoin standard. That
Yeah.
includes ETFs, hedge funds, and governments.
So
Why are we
look at
upset about that?
look at the value they're bringing into it. Look what they're
It's
doing.
incredible.
You know what I mean? This thing is gonna pop so much. It's going up 2 or 3 grand a day. It's going to start
It's
going up 10
incredible.
grand a day. That's what I can see
Yeah,
start happening.
totally.
Once it really takes off, it's only starting. You know,
Yes.
when I found out last year about the ETFs coming along, which is around July, August kind of time, and I said, this is going to be massive. The people have, and I'm not really a financial person, but I could put two and two together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I can do a little bit of maths regarding supply and demand.
Yeah.
There's bleeding trillions coming after this stuff. And there's only like
Totally.
maybe 1.6, 1.8 million coins left on the exchange. So try and
Yeah.
jam that trillions into that, hundreds of
Totally.
billions into it.
Yeah, Greg Foss says it with a bunch of F-bombs mixed in there. It's 11th grade math, everybody. It's 11th grade
Yeah,
math. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a physicist, a mathematician. Just 11th grade math. Pretty
yeah.
simple.
Deadly, deadly. All right, all right. So what's the plan for the day? What are you doing for the rest of the day? It's still early over there for you, is it? What, 10 or 11 o'clock?
It is. It's 10:30. I got a couple of responsibilities. I got things that I need to clean up. I have a few loose ends to wrap up and pertains to my cannabis growing career. I have some equipment that I'm selling that I don't need and
So
whatever.
are you
And
starting to wind down now? You're actually starting to
yeah,
wind
so
down the thing, right? Okay.
yeah. The greenhouse that I film the videos in is directly across the street from the property that I owned, got licensed, and sold. And so I made friends with all the neighbors. And when my neighbors got approved for their permit, which took them 6 years, mine took me 6 months, which is why I say it was a series of miracles. It really was. They contacted me because I am known to be a farm manager slash consultant, and I happened to be available at the time, and so we made an agreement, a deal, I had a 2-year contract where I went in, I designed the facility, I worked with all the contractors, the electricians, the builders, and set everything up, every little detail, what the spacing of the lighting is, the dehumidification, the climate control, the CO2, the computers and software that run the whole facility, and then managed it for the last 2 years. Oversaw every little detail, I don't know, 10 crops or so, facilitated the distribution to the licensed distributors and etc. And so my contract ended like a couple days before I went to Madeira. And so I'm out
Mhm.
of contract, but I'm finishing some things up. I have equipment and, I'm just downsizing. I'm dematerializing my life. In the cannabis business, we refer to premier cannabis as like AAA or top shelf cannabis. And
Yeah.
like subpar or what's referred to as boofy cannabis is called mids. And so I've come to this conclusion in my life that anything physical that I'm holding on to because it has economic energy or it has value in it is mids, dude. It just rots, it all rusts, it just goes to crap. So I'm like getting rid of everything that I don't need. It's dilutive of your energy too. And I take such good care of the things in my life that it's really easy for me to end up with a bunch of nice things that I spent decent money on that are quality that I just don't need anymore. And so I'm
Mhm.
going through this like mass shedding of everything that's dilutive of my life force. And so that's where I'm in the process of. I painted the house that I'm in a couple years ago. I went and bought $1,000 paint sprayer and painted it myself. And so I got this paint sprayer that I've been holding on to. I'm like, I need to sell this paint sprayer. What am I
Do you
doing
know
with this
what?
thing? And so,
Eric,
gosh,
that's exactly what I done. I went up to our
yes,
yard. I started looking around and I started selling all, I was calling it junk. And I was telling to my friends, it's not junk,
totally.
it's good stuff. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
just started taking pictures of it and putting it up on like deal sites and everything. And I'm getting
Yep.
like say €500 for this, straight into sats,
Totally.
getting 250 for this, an
Yeah.
old iPhone in the drawer, €100 for this, and you'd be surprised. A
Yep.
lot of people be surprised how much they can raise, you know? I'm like
Yeah.
when Bitcoin was 16 and a half, I got nearly a whole Bitcoin out of that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Dude, I love it. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I'm running around orange pilling people. I'm like, dude, there's a few friends of mine. So there's a nutrient formula that was formulated by some really epic world renowned cannabis producers that is not very known. They don't spend a lot of money. They don't spend any money on branding or packaging or anything like that. It's a commercial grade, pharmaceutical grade, essentially fertilizer. It's called Crop Tech, JR Crop Tech. And so I've been telling all these people within my community for like the last year and a half, 2 years, teaching them how to use this fertilizer, which saves them an enormous amount of money because the fertilizer companies are very predatory and they're selling these overpriced products to vulnerable, struggling cannabis farmers who don't know better. That, and then I'm orange pilling everybody I can, and I'll help set up their jades, and I'll help them. Dude, we'll have little sessions where I'll bring my stamp kit and I'll get a bunch of steel plates, titanium plates off of the internet, and we'll pound people's seed phrases in for them. So I'm the Bitcoin crop tech evangelist, is what people call me. And so, yeah, I have to set up a jade for somebody later today or later this week, and then I have a bunch of stuff that I need to get rid of and sell. And I do intend on moving out of the state of California actually this year at some point, and I think I'm moving to Tennessee. I haven't even been there, but I've done a lot of research on it, and we're gonna go visit. We might visit before the conference, and yeah, so I'm just making a lot of big changes in my life, and it's a lot of it. Bitcoin has been the catalyst for it, and it's just so amazing. I can't even put into words how grateful I
I
am for all
know.
of it. It
So
really is.
refreshing, isn't it? We
Oh
just
my
see something
goodness.
else in front of us now, don't we? Completely.
Yeah,
It opens up your whole life, you know?
totally. Yes.
Yeah, it's brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
So, Eric, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you? Your Twitter handle? What's your Twitter handle? Or you've got a website? Something like that?
Yeah, it's Eric ERIC V Stacks. I'm on Twitter, and I have Eric V Stacks YouTube channel. I haven't posted anything on YouTube. I intended on doing so early, but I started to get a lot of traction so much it was hard to keep up with on Twitter. But in the nearer future, I'll be posting all of my rants, conversations on Bitcoin on Twitter or X at Eric V Stacks. Also on Nostr and on YouTube. So Nostr and YouTube are coming, but currently I am on X or Twitter, whichever you want to call
Perfect.
it.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So if you want to catch him, you can catch him there again and look at us, follow him on X and subscribe to his YouTube channel and happy days.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It
Oh,
was a really awesome conversation.
no problem. No problem.